Vivian Caldwell tore the diamond engagement ring from her finger and threw it at Boston's most eligible bachelor in front of 300 guests. "You're a thief and a liar, and I won't marry you." The ballroom exploded. Her fiancé went white. Her mother fainted. Society turned on her instantly, not him. Within days, every door slammed shut. She was the scandal, the troublemaker, the woman who'd destroyed her own future. So she did the unthinkable. She answered an advertisement for a mail-order bride in Montana. A stranger's wife. A cowboy she'd never met. She didn't ask his name, didn't ask what he looked like. Just packed 2 bags and left the only world she'd ever known for a man and a life that would surprise her in ways she never imagined. Before we begin, please subscribe to my channel and stay with me until the very end of this story. Comment below with the city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey travels. The train lurched to a stop and Vivian pressed her gloved hand against the window. Dust. That was the first thing she saw. Dust everywhere coating the wooden platform, the few buildings visible in the distance, even the air itself seemed thick with it. This was Sweetwater, Montana. This was where she had chosen to come. Chosen. The word felt wrong in her mouth. She gathered her 2 cases and stepped onto the platform. The heat hit her immediately different from Boston's summer warmth. Dry. Relentless. A man in a worn hat glanced at her and kept walking. A woman with a baby didn't look at all. "Mrs. Hayes." Vivian turned. An elderly man with kind eyes stood a few feet away. "Not yet," Vivian said. "Miss Caldwell, for another few hours at least. Jim Porter, I run the general store." He reached for one of her cases. "Rowan asked me to meet you. He's running late." Late. Her future husband couldn't be bothered to meet her on time. "I see," Vivian said. "Ranch business?" Jim said quickly. "Nothing personal. He'll be here within the hour. You can wait at my store. My wife will make you comfortable." Vivian followed him down the dusty street. The town was smaller than she'd imagined. 1 main street. Maybe 20 buildings total. The general store sat at the corner, its windows displaying tools and fabric and things she couldn't name. Inside, a woman looked up from behind a counter. "Oh, you poor dear. You look exhausted. Jim, get her some water." "I'm fine," Vivian said. "You're not fine. You just spent 4 days on a train. Sit." The woman, Mrs. Porter, pulled out a chair. "I'm Margaret. And before you ask, yes, Rowan's a good man. Quiet but good." "Quiet," Vivian repeated. "Doesn't talk much, but he listens. That's rarer than you'd think out here." Margaret poured water from a pitcher. "You'll do fine. You look like you've got spine." Vivian almost laughed. Spine. That's what had gotten her into this situation. "How did you know Rowan was looking for a wife?" Vivian asked. Margaret's smile faltered slightly. "He mentioned it a few months back. Said the ranch needed help. Said he needed a partner who could think, not just cook and clean." "That's an unusual requirement." "Rowan's an unusual man." The door opened. Vivian turned, expecting to see her future husband. Instead, a young woman burst in, her face flushed. "Margaret, Doc Miller needs more bandages. The Campbell boy got kicked by a horse." "Again!" Margaret hurried toward the back. "That boy's going to get himself killed. How bad?" "Bad enough. His arm's broken for sure." Vivian stood. "I can help." Both women stared at her. "I've had medical training," Vivian said. It wasn't entirely true. She'd spent 2 summers volunteering at a charity hospital in Boston, mostly because her mother thought it would look good for society photographs. But she'd learned things, real things. "You just got here," Margaret said, "and I'm not doing anything else." 20 minutes later, Vivian stood in a small room above the saloon that served as the town's makeshift clinic. The boy, maybe 14, lay on a table, his arm bent at an angle that made Vivian's stomach turn. Doc Miller, a thin man with whiskey on his breath, was trying to set the bone. "Hold him," the doctor said. Vivian grabbed the boy's shoulders. He screamed. Almost, Doc Miller muttered. Almost. The bone clicked into place. The boy passed out. Good, the doctor said. Better when they're unconscious. He looked at Vivian. You didn't flinch. Should I have? Most women would have. I'm not most women. Doc Miller laughed a short, bitter sound. No, I don't suppose you are. He began wrapping the arm. You're the one marrying Rowan Hayes. News travels fast. In a town this size, news travels before it happens. He tied off the bandage. Rowan's a good man, but he's got troubles. What kind of troubles? The doctor's hands stilled. The kind everyone out here has. Land, money, powerful people who want both. He looked at her directly. You seem smart. Keep your eyes open. Before Vivian could respond, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Jim Porter appeared in the doorway. He's here, Jim said. Vivian's heart jumped. She hated that it did. She followed Jim back down to the street. A wagon sat in front of the general store pulled by two tired-looking horses. And standing beside it, hat in his hands, was Rowan Hayes. He was tall. That was the first thing she noticed. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that needed cutting, and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. He wasn't handsome in the way Boston men were handsome. No polish, no refinement. But there was something in his eyes, something steady that made her stop walking for just a moment. Miss Caldwell, he said. His voice was low, rough. Mr. Hayes. They stood there, two strangers about to promise their lives to each other. I apologize for being late, Rowan said. There was a problem with the fence line. So I heard. I hope the wait wasn't too uncomfortable. I helped set a boy's broken arm. It passed the time. Rowan's eyebrows rose slightly. Did you? Is that a problem? No, it's... He paused. Unexpected. I imagine many things about me will be unexpected, Mr. Hayes. For the first time, something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. I imagine so, Miss Caldwell. Margaret appeared with Vivian's cases. You two going to stand in the street all day, or are you going to get married? The Reverend's waiting, Jim added. Rowan looked at Vivian. If you've changed your mind, I'll buy you a ticket back to Boston. No questions asked. The offer surprised her. She'd expected many things from this meeting. Demands, expectations, not an escape route. Have you changed your mind? She asked. No. Then neither have I. The wedding took 7 minutes. The Reverend, a sweating man with a nervous smile, read from a book with pages so worn Vivian couldn't make out the words. Rowan repeated his vows in that same low, steady voice. Vivian repeated hers and realized her hands were shaking. You may kiss your bride, the Reverend said. Rowan hesitated. Then he leaned down and pressed his lips to Vivian's cheek. Brief, polite, nothing more. Congratulations, the Reverend said, not looking particularly convinced. Outside, Margaret hugged Vivian hard. You need anything, you send word. Don't be a stranger. Thank you, Vivian said, and meant it. Rowan helped her into the wagon. Her cases went in the back. Then he climbed up beside her and took the reins. They rode in silence for the first mile. The landscape was unlike anything Vivian had ever seen. Endless, open, beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. No buildings, no walls, just land and sky. How far is the ranch? She asked. 5 miles. Another mile passed. Your letter said you needed help with the ranch, Vivian said. What kind of help? Rowan kept his eyes on the road. The books, the accounts, they're a mess. You can't manage them yourself. I can manage cattle. I can manage land. Numbers on paper. He shook his head. That's a different language. I speak that language. I know. That's why I wrote to you. Vivian turned to look at him. You wrote to me specifically. Out of all the women who responded to your advertisement, you were the only one who mentioned experience with financial records. The only one who didn't spend 3 pages talking about cooking and sewing. I can cook and sew, That's not why I need a wife. The bluntness should have offended her. Instead, it was almost refreshing. Why do you need a wife, Mr. Hayes? He was quiet for a long moment. Because I can't fight this alone anymore. Fight what? He didn't answer. The ranch appeared on the horizon, a house, a barn, several outbuildings. Bigger than Vivian had expected, but clearly struggling. Fences that needed mending, buildings that needed paint, a sense of barely holding on. Rowan stopped the wagon in front of the house. It's not much. It's more than I have. He looked at her, then really looked at her, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. Two people who'd lost everything and were trying to build something from the wreckage. I'll show you inside, Rowan said. The house was simple. One main room serving as kitchen and living area. Two smaller rooms off to the side. Basic furniture, clean but sparse. That's your room, Rowan said, pointing to the door on the left. Mine's on the right. There's a lock on your door. You can use it whenever you want. The consideration in those words struck her. He was giving her safety, privacy, choice. Thank you, she said quietly. Rowan set her cases inside her room. I need to check on the cattle before dark. There's food in the kitchen. Help yourself to anything. Mr. Hayes, he turned. You said you can't fight this alone anymore. What is this? His jaw tightened. Get settled. We'll talk tomorrow. He left before she could press further. Vivian stood in the silent house and tried to understand what she'd just walked into. A struggling ranch. A husband who spoke in fragments. A doctor's warning about powerful people and trouble. She unpacked slowly, hanging her two good dresses in the small wardrobe, setting her brush and mirror on the plain dresser. The room was simple, but clean. More than she'd expected. Less than she'd left behind. When her cases were empty, she walked into the main room and found the books Rowan had mentioned. They sat in a crate beside the table. Ledgers, bills, documents, all jumbled together with no order, no system. She pulled out the first ledger and opened it. The numbers made no sense. Expenses that doubled from one month to the next with no explanation. Income that should have covered costs but somehow didn't. Interest rates that seemed impossibly high. And scattered throughout references to something called the consolidation fee. Vivian had worked with her father's business records for years before his death. She knew how honest books looked. These weren't honest books. These were books designed to hide something. She was still reading when Rowan returned an hour later. He stopped in the doorway, surprised to find her surrounded by papers. You started already, he said. These records are wrong. I know. No, I mean they're deliberately wrong. Someone's been manipulating them. She held up a page. This expense here, for equipment repair. It's listed 3 times in 1 month at different amounts, but the totals never add up correctly. Rowan moved closer. I thought I was just bad at math. You're not bad at math. Someone's stealing from you. His face went very still. Who? I don't know yet. But whoever's keeping these books is either incompetent or criminal. Given how carefully the mistakes are hidden, I'd bet on criminal. Rowan pulled out a chair and sat heavily. The land office handles most of my accounts. They said it was easier that way. I just sign what they give me. You sign without reading. I told you, numbers aren't my language. They need to be now. Vivian spread the papers across the table. If these records are accurate, you should be profitable. Instead, you're drowning in debt. Why? The land office says it's the market. Cattle prices are down. Are they? I don't know. Vivian stood and began organizing the papers into piles. We need to find out. We need real numbers, sales records, market prices, everything. She looked at him. How much do you owe? Total maybe $8,000. Vivian's hands stilled. $8,000. In Boston, that would be manageable. Out here, it could be a death sentence. To whom? The bank, the land office, various creditors. And if you can't pay... Rowan met her eyes. They take the ranch. There it was. the truth he'd been avoiding since she arrived. The fight he couldn't win alone. "How long do we have?" Vivian asked. 6 months, maybe less. 6 months to save a ranch she'd never seen before today. 6 months to untangle a web of financial manipulation. 6 months to learn how to be a wife to a man she'd known for less than 3 hours. "Then we'd better get started," Vivian said. Rowan looked at her like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "You're not running." "I already ran once, Mr. Hayes. It didn't solve anything." She pulled another ledger toward her. "I don't run anymore." Something changed in his expression. Respect, maybe. Or hope. "Rowan," he said. "What?" "Call me Rowan. We're married now." "Then call me Vivian." They worked until the light failed. Rowan brought in lamps, and they kept working. He answered her questions about the ranch operations, while she cross-referenced dates and amounts, building a timeline of when the financial problems had started. It was past midnight when Vivian finally sat back, rubbing her eyes. "It started 2 years ago," she said. "Whatever this is, it began exactly 2 years ago. Before that, your records show steady profit. After that, sudden, mysterious expenses and interest charges. 2 years ago is when the land office took over my accounts," Rowan said slowly. "Who runs the land office?" "Cyrus Blackwood. He owns half the town. Bank, general store. Most of the land around here." "Not the general store. Jim and Margaret Porter run that." "They rent from Blackwood." Vivian felt a chill. "Everyone rents from Blackwood." "Not everyone, but most. He bought up properties after the crash of '79, said he was helping people, saving the town. And instead he's controlling it." Vivian pulled out a clean sheet of paper and began making notes. "We need to talk to other ranchers, see if they're having the same problems." "They are," Rowan said quietly. 3 ranches have already gone under this year. Blackwood bought all of them." "At what price?" "Pennies on the dollar. Said it was all he could afford." Vivian's pen stilled. This wasn't just theft. This was systematic, organized. A man building an empire by destroying everyone around him. "This is bigger than bad bookkeeping," she said. "I know. If we expose this, Blackwood won't just let it go." "I know that too." Vivian looked at her new husband. He sat there calm and steady, fully aware of what they were facing. He'd known before she arrived. He'd known when he wrote that letter to Boston. He'd married a stranger and brought her into a war. "You should have told me," she said. "Would you have come?" She thought about that. About the letter she'd received, describing a simple ranch and a quiet life. About her desperation to escape Boston. About the choice she'd made. "Yes," she said finally. "I still would have come." "Why?" "Because I was drowning in Boston. At least here I can fight back." Rowan smiled, then really smiled, and it transformed his entire face. "Then we fight." They talked strategy until Vivian couldn't keep her eyes open. Rowan finally insisted she sleep. She stumbled to her room and collapsed on the bed, still wearing her dress. She woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. In the main room, Rowan had breakfast laid out. Simple food. Bread, eggs, bacon. But he'd set the table carefully, almost formally. "You didn't have to do this," Vivian said. "You're my wife, not my servant." She sat down, struck again by his unexpected thoughtfulness. They ate in companionable silence. Then Rowan said, "There's a town meeting tonight. Blackwood called it. He's proposing some new land regulations." "What kind of regulations?" "Don't know yet, but nothing he proposes is good for anyone but him." "Can we attend?" "We should. Let him see we're paying attention." Rowan refilled her coffee. "Vivian, about yesterday, about all of this. I know it's not what you expected." "Nothing in my life has been what I expected, Rowan. I'm getting used to it." "Still, you deserve to know what you're walking into. Blackwood's dangerous. He's already threatened me twice. Told me to stop asking questions about the accounts." "What did you tell him?" "That I'd ask whatever questions I wanted on my own land." Vivian felt a surge of admiration for this quiet, stubborn man. What happened after that? 2 days later, someone cut my fence line. Let half my cattle wander onto Blackwood's property. He charged me a recovery fee to get them back. That's extortion. That's business according to Blackwood. Vivian stood and began clearing the dishes. Her mind was already racing ahead, planning. Tonight at the meeting we listen, we watch, we see who else is uncomfortable with Blackwood's proposals. Looking for allies. Exactly. Rowan stood too. You know, in Boston you exposed a criminal and society turned on you. I'm aware. What makes you think it'll be different here? Vivian looked at him directly. Because here I'm not fighting alone. The words hung in the air between them. A promise. A partnership. Rowan nodded slowly. No, you're not. He left to work the ranch. Vivian spent the day organizing records, creating a system that would make the manipulation visible. She worked methodically the way her father had taught her, finding the patterns in the chaos. By late afternoon, she had proof. Not enough to convict Blackwood in a court of law, but enough to show exactly how he was bleeding the ranchers dry. Inflated fees, hidden charges, interest rates that violated territorial law. The question was what to do with that proof. As the sun began to set, Rowan returned. He'd cleaned up, changed into his better clothes. Still simple, still worn, but clearly his version of formal. Ready? He asked. Vivian smoothed her dress. One of her Boston dresses, dark blue silk, that suddenly felt absurd in this rough country. As I'll ever be. They rode into town together. The meeting was being held in the saloon, the only building large enough to hold everyone. Lanterns cast flickering light across faces. Vivian recognized some people from yesterday. Doc Miller, Margaret and Jim Porter, others she'd never seen. And at the front of the room, standing like he owned not just the building, but everyone in it, was Cyrus Blackwood. He was younger than Vivian had expected, maybe 45, well-dressed in a way that screamed money and power. He smiled when he saw Rowan and Vivian enter, but the smile never reached his eyes. Rowan Hayes, Blackwood said, his voice carrying across the room. And this must be your new bride. Welcome to Sweetwater, Mrs. Hayes. Every head turned. Vivian felt the weight of their stares. Judgment, curiosity, suspicion. Thank you, she said clearly. Please sit. We were just about to begin. Rowan found them seats near the back. Vivian scanned the room, noting who looked comfortable, who looked nervous, who wouldn't meet Blackwood's eyes. Blackwood cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. I'll keep this brief. As you know, the territory is growing. More settlers, more development. We need to ensure our town grows properly, sustainably. He paused. Which is why I'm proposing a new land assessment fee. Murmurs rippled through the room. What kind of fee? Someone called out. A small percentage of property value, say 5%, annually. 5%. Jim Porter stood. Cyrus, most of us are barely making ends meet as it is. I understand your concern, Jim, but this fee will fund improvements, better roads, a real school, maybe even a railroad spur. Or maybe it'll just line your pockets, a voice muttered. Blackwood's smile tightened. I'm hurt that anyone would suggest such a thing. This fee benefits everyone. Everyone except the people paying it, Rowan said quietly, but not quietly enough. Blackwood's gaze snapped to him. Do you have something to add, Rowan? Just an observation. 5% of property value on top of existing taxes and fees seems excessive. Does it? I think it's quite reasonable given the services provided. What services? Rowan stood. The road to my ranch is still full of holes. There's no school within 10 miles. And last I checked, there's no railroad spur being built. The room went very quiet. Blackwood's expression didn't change, but something cold entered his eyes. The services will come once the fees are collected. That's how development works, Rowan. Surely even you can understand that. The dismissal in his tone was clear. Rowan, the simple rancher, too stupid to understand complex matters. Vivian felt anger flare in her chest. She'd heard that tone before, in Boston, from men who thought being male and wealthy made them right about everything. She stood. Actually, she said clearly, I think my husband's question is quite reasonable. If you're collecting fees for future services, where are the contracts with builders? Where are the surveys for the railroad? Where's the documentation showing this money will actually be used as promised? Every eye in the room turned to her. Blackwood's smile was razor sharp. Mrs. Hayes, how lovely to hear from you. Though I'm not sure you understand how things work out here. We operate on trust. Trust is wonderful, Vivian said. Documentation is better. Someone in the back laughed, quickly stifled, but there. Blackwood's jaw tightened. I've been managing this town's finances for years, Mrs. Hayes. I don't need a newcomer questioning my integrity. I'm not questioning your integrity, Mr. Blackwood. I'm questioning your transparency. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. One assumes good intentions. The other demands proof of them. The temperature in the room dropped. Vivian could feel Rowan tense beside her, but he didn't try to stop her. Didn't apologize for her. Just stood there, solid and present. Blackwood looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Really seeing her. Calculating. You know, he said slowly, I heard about you. About what happened in Boston. About how you accused your own fiancé of theft. The room rustled with whispers. I exposed financial fraud, Vivian said evenly. There's a difference. And yet here you are, exiled, married to a rancher you'd never met. Blackwood's smile returned. Makes one wonder if perhaps you were wrong about your fiancé. If perhaps you simply couldn't accept that a man knew better than you did about financial matters. The trap was beautifully laid. If she defended herself, she looked defensive. If she stayed silent, she looked guilty. Vivian looked at Rowan. He met her eyes and nodded slightly. Your choice. She turned back to Blackwood. My fiancé is currently in prison, Mr. Blackwood, convicted of embezzling $73,000 from his business partners. So no, I wasn't wrong. I was exactly right. The problem was that I made powerful people uncomfortable by being right, by refusing to stay quiet when I saw something wrong. She paused. I don't stay quiet anymore. The silence was absolute. Then someone started clapping. Slow, deliberate. Vivian turned to see Doc Miller standing, his hands coming together in clear applause. Well said, Mrs. Hayes, the doctor called out. Well said indeed. Others joined. Not everyone, but enough. Margaret Porter, Jim. A few ranchers Vivian didn't know. Blackwood's face went very still. Meeting adjourned, he said flatly. We'll vote on the land assessment fee next week. Think carefully about your decision. He walked out without looking back. The crowd began to disperse. Some people avoided Vivian's eyes. Others nodded at her as they passed. Margaret hugged her hard. That took spine, Margaret whispered. But be careful. Cyrus doesn't forget. Neither do I, Vivian said. Outside, Rowan helped her into the wagon. They rode in silence for a mile. Then Rowan said, He's going to come after us now. I know. I mean really come after us, not just threats, action. Good. Vivian looked at him, because now we know exactly who we're fighting. Rowan shook his head, that almost smile playing at his lips. Every day with you is a surprise. Is that good or bad? He thought about it. Good. Definitely good. They rode home under the stars, two people who'd known each other for barely a day, already bound together in something deeper than marriage. A partnership. A war. Vivian looked out at the dark landscape and realized something for the first time since Boston. She didn't feel afraid. She felt alive. The real fight was just beginning. The attack came 3 days later. Vivian was in the kitchen when she heard Rowan shout. She dropped the ledger she'd been reviewing and ran outside. Smoke rose from the east pasture, thick and black against the morning sky. Fire, Rowan said, already running toward the barn. Stay here. No. Vivian grabbed a bucket. Where's the water? He stopped, turned. Vivian. Where? The well. But you don't? She was already running. She heard him curse, then his boots pounding after her. The fire had started in the dry grass near the fence line. Small now, but spreading fast. Rowan beat at the flames with a blanket while Vivian threw water. Another bucket. Another. Her arms burned, her lungs filled with smoke. There, Rowan pointed. The wind's pushing it that way. We cut it off there, we save the rest. They worked in desperate silence. Water, blanket, water. The flames fought back hungry and vicious. Vivian's dress was soaked, her face streaked with soot. She didn't stop. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably 20 minutes, the last flame died. Rowan collapsed to his knees, coughing. Vivian bent double, gasping. You all right? Rowan's voice was rough. Fine. She wasn't. Her hands were blistered. You... been worse. They looked at the damage. Maybe 2 acres burned. Could have been the whole ranch. This wasn't an accident, Vivian said. No. Rowan walked to where the fire had started. He bent down, picked up something, a piece of cloth partially burned. Someone said it. Vivian felt cold despite the heat still radiating from the scorched earth. Blackwood. Can't prove it. We don't have to prove it. We know it. Rowan's jaw tightened. Knowing and proving are different things. Then we get proof. Vivian walked back toward the house. Starting now. Inside, she pulled out a fresh sheet of paper and began writing. Every incident, every threat, every suspicious charge in the ledgers. She created a timeline showing the pattern. Fire here, fence cutting there. Always after Rowan questioned something. Always designed to cost money he didn't have. Rowan watched her work. What are you doing? Building a case. If we're going to fight him, we need documentation, evidence, a record he can't dispute. You think anyone will listen? Vivian looked up. Someone will. Someone has to. She paused. Rowan, who keeps the territorial records, land deeds, contracts, that sort of thing. County seat, Helena, about 3 days' ride. We should go there, see what Blackwood's filed, what claims he's made. That's a week round trip. I can't leave the ranch that long. Then I'll go alone. Absolutely not. Vivian set down her pen. I'm not asking permission. I'm not giving orders. I'm stating facts. Blackwood just tried to burn us out. You think he'd hesitate to do worse to you alone on the road? So, what do you suggest? Rowan thought for a moment. Doc Miller. He goes to Helena once a month for medical supplies. His next trip's in 2 weeks. You could ride with him. 2 weeks is a long time. It's safer than going alone. Vivian wanted to argue, but he was right. She nodded reluctantly. Fine, 2 weeks, but in the meantime we keep digging. A knock at the door interrupted them. Rowan opened it to find Jim Porter standing there, hat in his hands, looking uncomfortable. Jim, Rowan said. What's wrong? Can I come in? Course. Jim entered, nodding at Vivian. Mrs. Hayes, I heard about the fire. News travels fast, Vivian said. Always does. Jim shifted his weight. Look, I'm just going to say it straight. Blackwood came by the store this morning. He's calling in his rent, 6 months early. Rowan went very still. You rent month to month? I did, but he showed me the contract. Says he can demand full payment anytime he wants. It's right there in the fine print. Jim's voice was bitter. Fine print I never read close enough. Vivian felt her pulse quicken. How much does he want? $3,000. By end of month. Jim, that's impossible. I know. Jim looked at Rowan. He's doing it to others too. Anyone who was at that meeting. Anyone who supported you and Vivian. He paused. He's making an example of us. Silence fell. Vivian's mind raced. This was worse than she'd thought. Blackwood wasn't just corrupt, he was systematic, ruthless. There has to be a way out, she said. Not legally. The contracts are solid. He made sure of that. Jim managed a weak smile. Should have listened to my wife. She said there's no such thing as a fair deal with Cyrus Blackwood. After Jim left, Vivian pulled out every contract, every agreement, every piece of paper related to Blackwood's business dealings. She read through the night, Rowan beside her, both of them searching for a weakness, a loophole, anything. At dawn, she found it. "Rowan, look at this." He leaned over her shoulder. She pointed to a clause in one of the land office contracts. "This interest rate, 18%. That's illegal under territorial law. Maximum allowed is 12% for secured loans." Rowan read it again. "You're sure?" "Positive. My father dealt with territorial regulations for years. I know the limits." She pulled out another contract. "And here, this consolidation fee. There's no such thing in territorial law. He's invented it. So the contracts are invalid. Parts of them, maybe all of them. But we'd need a lawyer to argue it. A good one. Lawyers cost money we don't have." Vivian sat back thinking. Then she stood abruptly. "What if we don't need a lawyer? What if we just need people to know the truth?" "What do you mean? Everyone in this town is terrified of Blackwood because they think he has the law on his side. But if we can show them he's been breaking the law all along, breaking it systematically." She looked at Rowan. "People might stop being afraid. Or they might be more afraid, because if Blackwood's willing to break the law, what else is he willing to do? Then we make sure there are enough of us that he can't hurt all of us." Rowan shook his head slowly. "You really don't give up, do you? Not anymore." The next day, Vivian rode into town alone. Rowan had argued against it, but she'd been firm. She needed to talk to people without him there, without the complication of the male-rancher dynamic. Her first stop was the general store. Margaret looked up from the counter, worry creasing her face. "Vivian, you shouldn't be here. I need to talk to you and Jim." "Jim's in the back, but Vivian, Blackwood's got people watching. If he sees you talking to us, let him see." Vivian kept her voice low but firm. "Margaret, how many people in this town are in trouble with Blackwood right now?" Margaret glanced toward the door. "Most of them. Why?" "Because I found something that might help everyone." Jim emerged from the back room. "Vivian, you need to go, for your own safety." "I will, in a minute. First look at this." She pulled out a paper she'd copied from the contracts. "This interest rate, it's illegal, and this fee here, also illegal. Blackwood's been violating territorial law for years." Jim and Margaret stared at the paper. "Why hasn't anyone caught this before?" Margaret asked. "Because he buries it in fine print. Because people don't read contracts carefully. Because he counts on fear and ignorance." Vivian leaned forward. "But now we know. And if we tell others?" "They won't care," Jim said quietly. "They'll be too scared." "Then we find the ones who aren't scared. We find the ones who are angry enough to fight back." Margaret looked at her husband. Something passed between them. A decision. "Doc Miller," Margaret said. "He's been complaining about Blackwood's medical supply charges for months. And the Hendersons. They lost their son's ranch to foreclosure last year. They're still bitter." "What about the sheriff?" Vivian asked. Jim laughed a harsh sound. "The sheriff works for Blackwood. Everyone knows it." "Then we go around the sheriff. We document everything. We get statements from people Blackwood's hurt. We take it to the territorial governor." "That'll take months," Jim said. "I know, but it's a start." Margaret touched Vivian's hand. "You're putting yourself in danger for people you barely know." "Why?" Vivian thought about Boston, about standing in that ballroom speaking truth and being destroyed for it, about running, about the weight of silence. "Because someone has to," she said simply. She spent the rest of the day moving carefully through town, talking to people in quiet corners and back rooms, anywhere Blackwood's eyes couldn't reach. Some turned her away, but others listened. Others shared their own stories of manipulated contracts, impossible fees, land seized on technicalities. By evening, she had statements from 7 families, all willing to testify if it came to that, all desperate enough to risk Blackwood's anger. She was riding home when she saw the horse. It was standing in the middle of the road, Saddle empty reins dragging. Vivian recognized it immediately. One of Rowan's horses. Her heart stopped. She spurred her own horse forward, following the trail of disturbed dust, around a bend, through a copse of trees. And then she saw him. Rowan was on the ground, blood on his face, two men standing over him. She didn't recognize them, but she knew what they were. Blackwood's men. Vivian didn't think. She just acted. She rode straight at them, shouting. The men looked up, surprised. That surprise gave Rowan the second he needed. He surged up, catching one man in the stomach with his shoulder. They went down hard. Vivian jumped from her horse, grabbing a rock. The second man turned toward her and she threw it. It caught him on the temple. He staggered. Rowan was on his feet now, blocking a punch, landing one of his own. The first man went down and stayed down. The second man looked at Vivian, at Rowan, and made a calculation. He ran. Silence, except for heavy breathing. "You all right?" Vivian asked. Rowan touched his split lip, winced. "I've had better days." He looked at her. "You threw a rock at a man twice your size. He was hurting you." Something fierce and tender crossed his face. "Vivian, don't tell me I shouldn't have done it. Don't tell me it was dangerous. I was going to say thank you." "Oh." They rode home together, Rowan's horse trailing behind. Neither spoke. But something had shifted. Again. At the house, Vivian cleaned Rowan's cuts while he sat silent and stoic. The gash on his cheekbone was deep. "This needs stitches," she said. "I've had worse." "That's not the point." She threaded a needle. "This is going to hurt." "I know." She worked carefully, her hands steady despite everything. Rowan didn't flinch, not once. Just watched her face while she concentrated. "Those men said something," he said quietly, "before you showed up." "What?" "They said Blackwood knows what you're doing, knows you've been talking to people. He said to tell you to stop while you still can." Vivian's hand stilled. "And what did you say?" "I told them my wife does what she wants, and if Blackwood has a problem with that, he can take it up with me directly." "That's why they hit you." "Worth it." Vivian tied off the last stitch. "You're impossible." "So are you." Their eyes met, held. Vivian became aware of how close they were standing, of the warmth radiating from him, of the way he was looking at her like she was something remarkable instead of something scandalous. She stepped back. "I should make dinner." "Vivian." She stopped. "What you did today," Rowan said. "Talking to people. Building a case. It was brave. Reckless, but brave." "I had to try." "I know. But you need to understand something. Blackwood doesn't play by rules. He doesn't care about laws or evidence or what's right. He cares about power, and he'll do anything to keep it." "So will I," Vivian said. "To take it away from him." Rowan stood, moving close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Then we do it together. No more going into town alone. No more taking risks without telling me." "I don't need protection." "I know you don't, but you're going to get it anyway, because that's what partners do." Partners. Not husband and wife, not man and woman. Partners. Vivian felt something warm unfold in her chest. "All right, together." That night they sat at the table and planned. Vivian showed him the statements she'd collected. Rowan added details about the families involved, about who else might be willing to talk. They created a strategy. Careful, methodical, building toward something bigger. "Doc Miller leaves for Helena in 12 days, Vivian said. "I can file a formal complaint with the Territorial Land Office. Get official eyes on Blackwood's dealings. He'll know the moment you leave town. Let him know, we're not hiding anymore." Rowan smiled, that almost smile. "No, I suppose we're not." They worked until exhaustion forced them to stop. As Vivian stood to go to her room, Rowan caught her hand. "Vivian, today when I saw you ride at those men..." He paused, searching for words. "I've never had anyone fight for me before. Not like that. You would have done the same for me." In a heartbeat. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither was quite ready to name. Vivian squeezed his hand once. "Good night, Rowan." "Good night." She lay in bed that night, listening to the sounds of the ranch. The wind, the cattle, the house settling. And somewhere in the other room, Rowan doing the same. She'd come here expecting simplicity. Instead, she'd found complexity, danger, purpose, and maybe, just maybe, belonging. The next morning brought a visitor. Vivian looked up from the ledgers to see a rider approaching. Not Blackwood's men, someone else. Rowan stepped out onto the porch, hand resting casually on his belt, where his gun hung. The rider stopped a respectful distance away. Young, maybe 20. Nervous. "Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Hayes, my name's Tommy Fletcher. I work for the Henderson Ranch." "I know who you are," Rowan said. "What do you want?" "Mr. Henderson sent me. He heard Mrs. Hayes was talking to people about Blackwood. He wants to help. He's got documents. From when Blackwood foreclosed on his son's place. He says the numbers don't add up." Vivian stepped forward. "What kind of documents?" "Everything. Loan agreements, payment records, the foreclosure notice. He kept it all because he knew something was wrong, but he couldn't prove it." "Why now?" Rowan asked. "Why not come forward before?" Tommy looked down. "Because his son killed himself after losing the ranch. Mr. Henderson's got nothing left to lose." The words hit like a physical blow. Vivian felt them in her chest, in her throat. "Tell Mr. Henderson I'll come see him tomorrow," she said quietly. "He said you should come today, before Blackwood finds out." Vivian looked at Rowan. He nodded. "We'll both come." The Henderson Ranch sat on the far edge of the valley, small and struggling. Mr. Henderson himself answered the door, an old man with grief carved into every line of his face. "Mrs. Hayes, thank you for coming." He showed them inside. The documents were spread across his kitchen table. Vivian began reading and felt her blood go cold. The loan agreement showed 12% interest. The payment records showed 18% being charged. The foreclosure notice claimed Henderson's son had missed 6 payments, but the payment records showed only 3 missed payments, all with valid explanations attached. "Blackwood changed the numbers," Vivian said. "I know, but I couldn't prove it. The land office had copies that matched Blackwood's version, not mine." "How is that possible?" Henderson's voice was bitter. "Because the land office is Blackwood. He doesn't just own the land, Mrs. Hayes. He controls the records. Everything official goes through him." Vivian felt the pieces clicking into place. "So he can make the official version say anything he wants." "Exactly. But you kept your own copies. My son kept them. Meticulous records, every payment, every correspondence. When they foreclosed, I kept everything. Just in case." His voice broke. "Just in case there was ever a chance to make it right." Rowan put a hand on the old man's shoulder. "There is. We'll make it right." "How Blackwood owns the law out here." "Not the territorial law," Vivian said. "Not the courts in Helena. If we can get these documents to the territorial authorities, show them the pattern of fraud, they won't care about one old man's dead son. They'll care about systematic corruption, about a man manipulating official land records for profit, about dozens of families defrauded." Vivian gathered the documents. "May I take these? I promise I'll keep them safe." Henderson looked at her for a long moment. "You really think you can beat him?" "I think we have to try." He nodded slowly. "Then take them, and God help you both." They rode back as the sun was setting. Vivian held Henderson's documents like they were made of gold, because in a way they were. They were proof, real, undeniable proof. "This changes everything," she said. "This makes us his primary target," Rowan replied. "Good. Let him come after us. We're ready." "Are we?" Vivian looked at him. "We stopped a fire. We fought off his men. We've collected evidence from 7 families and counting." "Yes, Rowan, we're ready." He didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. At home, Vivian added Henderson's documents to her growing file. She now had evidence of illegal interest rates, fabricated fees, altered official records, and wrongful foreclosure. It was enough. More than enough. 10 days until Helena. 10 days to keep this safe. 10 days to stay alive. That night, Vivian couldn't sleep. She sat at the table reviewing everything again, making sure she hadn't missed anything. She heard Rowan's door open. He emerged in work clothes, hair disheveled. "Can't sleep either," he asked. "Too much in my head." He poured coffee from the pot she'd kept warm, sat across from her. They drank in comfortable silence. "Vivian," he said finally, "what happened in Boston? Your fiancé. You said he went to prison." "He did? Was it worth it exposing him?" She thought about that, about the cost, about everything she'd lost. "Yes," she said, "because staying silent would have meant becoming complicit, and I couldn't live with that." She paused. "Is that what you're asking? Whether this is worth it?" "I'm asking if you regret coming here, if you wish you'd chosen a different life." Vivian looked at him. Really looked at him. This quiet, stubborn man who'd married a stranger to save his ranch, who'd given her a locked door and a partnership instead of demands and possession, who stood beside her instead of in front of her. "No," she said softly. "I don't regret it." Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe, or hope. "Good," he said, "because I don't either." The moment stretched, filled with things neither was ready to say. Then Rowan stood. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we make copies of everything, just in case." In case of what? In case Blackwood tries to destroy the originals. He was right, of course. They spent the next day painstakingly copying every document, every statement, every piece of evidence. Vivian's hand cramped. She kept writing. They hid the copies in 3 different locations: the barn, the root cellar, with Doc Miller in town. "Paranoid?" Vivian asked. "Prepared," Rowan corrected. That night, Vivian finally allowed herself to hope. They had evidence. They had a plan. They had each other. 5 days until Helena. 5 days until they could take everything to the authorities. 5 days until the fight became official. She fell asleep at the table, head on her arms, surrounded by papers. When she woke, someone had covered her with a blanket. Rowan's blanket from the smell of it. She smiled despite everything. Every day with him was a surprise, just like the title promised. But the surprises weren't grand gestures or dramatic declarations. They were quiet kindnesses, steady support, trust earned and given in equal measure. She looked at the documents spread around her, at the evidence of corruption and cruelty, at the chance to make something right. 5 days. They just had to survive 5 more days. They didn't get 5 days. Vivian woke to pounding on the door. Dawn light barely touched the windows. She stumbled from her room. Rowan already there, pulling the door open. Margaret Porter stood on the porch, hair wild, eyes wide with panic. "They took Jim." Vivian's blood went cold. "Who took him?" "Blackwood's men, an hour ago. They said he was being arrested for theft. They dragged him out of our store in front of everyone." Margaret's voice cracked. "Vivian, he didn't steal anything. This is because he talked to you." Rowan grabbed his coat. "Where did they take him?" "The jail. But the sheriff won't let me see him. He says Jim's being held pending investigation." "Investigation of what?" Vivian demanded. "Blackwood claims Jim's been skimming profits from the store. Says he has proof." Vivian knew instantly what had happened. Fabricated evidence, just like Henderson's altered payment records, just like every other piece of Blackwood's manipulation. "We're going into town," Rowan said. "No." Vivian grabbed his arm. "That's what he wants. He's baiting us." "I don't care what he wants. Jim's in jail because of us. And if we walk into that jail, we'll be arrested too. Then who fights for any of us?" Vivian turned to Margaret. "Did they search your store?" "Yes." "Took some of the account books." "Which ones?" "I don't know. Jim handles all that." Vivian's mind raced. If Blackwood had the books, he could alter them. create whatever evidence he needed, unless they had copies, unless Jim had been smart enough to keep duplicates. Margaret, did Jim keep backup records anywhere? Margaret thought for a moment. At home. In the cellar. He said a good businessman always keeps 2 sets of books. Show me. They rode to town together, all 3 of them. Vivian's heart hammered the entire way. This was escalating faster than she'd anticipated. Blackwood wasn't waiting anymore. He was striking hard and fast. At the porter's home behind the store, Margaret led them to the cellar. True to his word, Jim had kept meticulous duplicate records. Vivian grabbed them all, stuffing them into a satchel. "What are you going to do with those?" Margaret asked. "Prove Jim's innocent. Prove Blackwood's lying." Vivian climbed back up the stairs. "Where's Doc Miller?" "His office, probably." "Why?" "Because we're leaving for Helena today. Not in 5 days. Today." Rowan caught her arm. "Vivian, we're not ready. We're out of time. Blackwood just showed us that. He's going to pick us off one by one unless we move now." "The documents?" "We have copies. We have enough." She looked at him. "Rowan, if we wait, he'll arrest more people. He'll manufacture more charges. We have to go now while we still can." Rowan stared at her, jaw tight. Then he nodded. "I'll get the horses ready. You find Doc Miller." They split up. Vivian ran to the doctor's office, Margaret trailing behind. Doc Miller was inside organizing medical supplies. "Doc, I need your help." He looked up, took in her expression. "What's happened?" "We need to leave for Helena, today, right now." "That's impossible. I'm not ready. I don't have—" "Jim Porter's in jail on false charges. Blackwood's moving against everyone who's talked to me. If we don't get to the territorial authorities now, there won't be anyone left to save." Doc Miller set down the bottle he was holding. "You're serious?" "Completely." He looked at Margaret, who nodded. "Jim's innocent. You know it. I know it. Everyone knows it. But knowing doesn't matter if Blackwood controls the evidence." The doctor was quiet for a long moment. Then he grabbed his coat. "I'll need an hour to pack essentials. Meet me at the north end of town." Vivian wanted to argue about the hour, but knew she couldn't. They needed him. She nodded. 1 hour, not a minute more. She met Rowan at their wagon. He'd already loaded supplies, water the satchel with their documents wrapped in oilcloth. "You sure about this?" he asked. "No, but we're doing it anyway." They had 45 minutes before they were supposed to meet Doc Miller. Vivian paced. Rowan checked the horses for the 3rd time. Every minute felt like an hour. Then they heard shouting. Vivian turned to see a crowd gathering in the town square. At the center stood Cyrus Blackwood, flanked by the sheriff and 2 deputies. And in front of them, hands bound, was Jim Porter. "What's he doing?" Rowan muttered. "Making an example." Vivian started toward the square. Rowan grabbed her hand. "Don't." "I have to." "Vivian." But she was already walking. She heard Rowan curse, then his footsteps behind her. Always behind her. Always there. The crowd parted as she approached. Blackwood's eyes found her immediately. He smiled. "Mrs. Hayes, how good of you to join us. We were just discussing your friend Mr. Porter's crimes." "He hasn't committed any crimes." "Haven't he?" "The evidence suggests otherwise." Blackwood held up a ledger. "This shows clearly that Mr. Porter has been embezzling from his own store. Quite extensively, I'm afraid." "That's a lie." Vivian kept her voice steady. "You altered those books." "I did no such thing. These are Mr. Porter's own records, seized legally by the sheriff during a legitimate investigation." "Show me." Blackwood's smile widened. "I don't think that's appropriate, Mrs. Hayes. This is official business." "Then make it unofficial. If you have real evidence, show it. Let everyone see exactly what Jim supposedly did." The crowd murmured. Blackwood's expression flickered with annoyance. He'd wanted a quick, decisive show of power. Vivian was turning it into a public examination. "Very well." He opened the ledger, pointing to entries. "Here. And here. Unexplained withdrawals totaling over $2,000. Vivian looked at the numbers. They were wrong. Deliberately, obviously wrong to anyone who understood bookkeeping. The dates didn't match the inventory records. The amounts didn't correlate with any actual expenses. "These entries don't make sense," she said loudly. "The dates are wrong. The math doesn't add up. This isn't evidence of embezzlement. It's evidence of poor forgery." "Are you calling me a forger, Mrs. Hayes?" "I'm calling these books falsified. Whether you did it yourself or had someone do it for you doesn't change the facts." The crowd's murmuring grew louder. People were listening, thinking, questioning. Blackwood's face hardened. "You're treading on dangerous ground, Mrs. Hayes." "Am I? Or am I just pointing out what everyone here can see if they bother to look?" She turned to the crowd. "How many of you have had dealings with Mr. Blackwood? How many have found yourselves suddenly in debt you don't remember incurring? How many have signed contracts you thought said one thing only to find they said another?" Silence, but a heavy silence, a thinking silence. How many of you have lost land to foreclosure despite making every payment on time? How many have seen fees appear that you never authorized? How many have been too afraid to ask questions because you knew what happened to people who did? "That's enough." Blackwood's voice was ice. "Sheriff, arrest Mrs. Hayes for slander and disturbing the peace." The sheriff moved forward. Rowan stepped between them. "She's not going anywhere," Rowan said quietly. "You want to join your friend in jail, Hayes? Try it." The tension snapped tight. The crowd pressed closer. Vivian could feel violence building in the air like a storm about to break. Then Doc Miller's voice cut through. "I'll vouch for them both. Mrs. Hayes and Mr. Hayes are traveling with me to Helena today on medical business. They're under my protection." Blackwood turned on him. "You're interfering in official business, Doctor, and you're manufacturing evidence against innocent people. I'd say we're both overstepping." Doc Miller moved to stand beside Rowan and Vivian. "But here's the thing, Cyrus. I've been in this town longer than you have. I delivered half these people's children. They trust me. And I'm telling them right now that Jim Porter is innocent, and you're a liar." The crowd erupted. Voices raised in agreement, in anger, in fear. Blackwood's control was slipping. He knew it. Vivian could see it in his face. "This isn't over," Blackwood said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Not even close." "No," Vivian agreed. "It's not. But when it is, you'll be the one in jail. Not Jim. Not us. You." She turned and walked away. Rowan and Doc Miller flanked her. Behind them, the crowd continued to argue, some defending Blackwood, more questioning him. Seeds of doubt had been planted, but they'd also made themselves undeniable targets. "We need to leave now," Doc Miller said. "Forget the hour. 5 minutes." They made it to the edge of town before the shot rang out. The bullet hit the dirt 3 feet in front of their wagon. The horses reared. Rowan fought for control, while Vivian grabbed the documents to keep them from spilling. Another shot, closer this time. "Go!" Doc Miller shouted. He had his own wagon already moving. Rowan snapped the reins, and their horses bolted. They raced out of Sweetwater with bullets chasing them. Vivian looked back once and saw 3 riders pursuing them. Not the sheriff, Blackwood's private men. "How far to the territorial line?" Vivian shouted over the thunder of hooves. 10 miles, maybe 12. Rowan's voice was grim. "They'll catch us before that." "Not if we're smart." Vivian scanned the landscape. "There, that canyon. If we can reach it, they'll have to come at us single file. Or they'll trap us. Better than being shot in the open." Rowan veered toward the canyon. The wagon bounced over rough ground. Vivian held on, praying the wheels would hold. Behind them, the riders were gaining. They crashed into the canyon entrance. Narrow walls rose on either side. Rowan pulled the wagon sideways, blocking the path. He grabbed his rifle. "Stay down," he ordered. "I don't have a gun, Rowan. I can't stay down." He looked at her, frustration and fear warring on his face. Then he pulled a second rifle from beneath the seat. "You know how to shoot. Point and pull the trigger. Close enough." He showed her quickly how to load, how to aim. Don't shoot unless you're sure of your target." The riders appeared at the canyon mouth. 3 men all armed. They stopped when they saw the barricaded wagon. "Hayes," one of them shouted. "Hand over the woman and those documents. Do that, you can leave." "Not a chance," Rowan called back. "Blackwood said you'd say that. Said to give you one more opportunity to be reasonable." "I'm done being reasonable. You want us, come get us." The men looked at each other. Then one dismounted rifle raised. He started forward using the canyon wall for cover. Rowan fired. The bullet ricocheted off rock. The man dove back. "Next one won't miss," Rowan said. "Standoff." The riders couldn't advance without exposing themselves. Rowan and Vivian couldn't leave without being shot, and somewhere behind the riders, Vivian knew more men might be coming. "Rowan," she said quietly, "we can't stay here forever." "I know. So what do we do?" Before he could answer, Doc Miller's wagon came crashing into view from a different direction. He'd circled around somehow, coming up behind the riders. The old doctor had a shotgun leveled. "Gentlemen," Doc Miller said pleasantly, "I suggest you ride back to town and tell Cyrus that attempted murder is a hanging offense, even in Montana." The riders looked at each other. 3 against 3 now, but Doc Miller had the advantage of position and surprise. After a tense moment, they retreated, mounting their horses and riding away. But everyone knew they'd be back, with reinforcements. "We need to move," Doc Miller said. "Fast. The territorial line's our only safety." They abandoned the blocked position and rode hard. Vivian's whole body ached from the rough wagon. She didn't care. She clutched the documents and prayed they'd make it. 2 hours later, they crossed into territorial jurisdiction. No magical line in the dirt, just a marker stone. But it meant Blackwood's private men couldn't legally pursue them anymore. The territorial marshal's authority superseded local sheriffs. They didn't stop until Helena was in sight. 3 days of normal travel compressed into one brutal push. The horses were exhausted. So were they. But they'd made it. Helena was bigger than Vivian had expected. A real town with real buildings and real law. The Territorial Land Office sat in the center, an impressive stone structure that represented order and justice, or so she hoped. Inside, a clerk looked up from his desk. "Can I help you?" "We need to file a formal complaint," Vivian said, "against Cyrus Blackwood of Sweetwater for fraud, corruption, and manipulation of official land records." The clerk's eyebrows rose. "That's a serious charge, ma'am. I have serious evidence." She set the satchel on his desk. Documents from multiple families showing systematic fraud, contracts with illegal interest rates, fabricated fees, altered payment records, all designed to force people into foreclosure so Blackwood can seize their land. The clerk looked at the stack of papers, then at Vivian, then at Rowan and Doc Miller standing behind her. "You'll need to speak with the land commissioner," he said slowly. "But I should warn you, Mr. Blackwood is a respected businessman with significant holdings. Accusations like this require substantial proof." "I have substantial proof." Vivian's voice was steel. "The question is whether you're willing to look at it." Something shifted in the clerk's expression. Respect, maybe. "Wait here." He disappeared into the back office. Vivian could hear voices too low to make out words. She looked at Rowan. "What if they don't listen?" she asked quietly. "Then we make them listen." The clerk returned with an older man, gray-haired and serious-faced. "I'm Commissioner Walsh. You have allegations against Cyrus Blackwood. I have proof of his crimes." Vivian opened the satchel and began laying out documents. Starting with these contracts showing interest rates in violation of territorial law, and these payment records showing systematic alteration of official documents, and these statements from multiple families detailing patterns of fraud and manipulation. Walsh examined the papers. His expression never changed, but Vivian could see his eyes sharpening, focusing. This was a man who understood what he was looking at. "These are serious allegations," he said finally. "Yes, sir. If proven true, this represents one of the most extensive fraud cases I've seen in 20 years. He looked at her. "You understand what you're starting here, A formal investigation will take months. Mr. Blackwood will fight back. He has resources connections. This won't be easy. Nothing worth doing is easy. Walsh almost smiled. No, I suppose not. He gathered the documents. I'll need official statements from everyone involved. Starting with you, Mrs. Hayes. Tell me everything. They spent the next 6 hours in that office. Vivian recounted the entire story while a stenographer took notes. Rowan added details. Doc Miller provided medical testimony about suspicious deaths that might have been connected to Blackwood's schemes. Other families had lost not just land, but lives. By the time they finished, night had fallen. Walsh sat back exhausted but determined. This is enough to open a formal investigation, he said. I'll need you to leave the original documents here. We'll provide certified copies for your records. Vivian hesitated. Those documents were everything. Her only proof, her only weapon. You'll have to trust us, Walsh said gently. I know that's difficult, but the original documents need to stay in official custody to maintain chain of evidence for any potential trial. Rowan touched her shoulder. It's the right call. Vivian nodded slowly. All right, but I want those copies, every single page. You'll have them tomorrow morning. They found a boarding house for the night. 3 rooms side by side. Vivian could barely climb the stairs. Exhaustion had caught up with her all at once. In her room, she collapsed on the bed, still fully dressed. Someone knocked. She opened the door to find Rowan there holding a plate of food. You need to eat, he said. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. She took the plate. He lingered in the doorway. Vivian, what you did today. In Sweetwater, in that canyon in the land office. That was... He paused, searching for words. You saved us. All of us. We saved each other. That's what partners do. He smiled that rare, full smile that transformed his face. Yeah, I guess it is. After he left, Vivian ate mechanically, her mind already racing ahead. The investigation would take time, months, Walsh had said, and during those months Blackwood would still control Sweetwater, still hold Jim Porter in jail, still threaten everyone who'd helped them. They'd won a battle. But the war was far from over. She fell asleep thinking about what came next, about the long fight ahead, about whether they were strong enough to see it through. The next morning, Walsh had the copies ready, perfect duplicates officially certified. Vivian checked every page before accepting them. What happens now? She asked. Now I send investigators to Sweetwater. They'll examine original records, interview witnesses, audit Blackwood's holdings. Walsh paused. I should warn you. Once they arrive, Blackwood will know you're behind this. He'll retaliate. He's already retaliating. At least now we have the law on our side. The law moves slowly, Mrs. Hayes. Blackwood moves fast. Then we'll have to be faster. Outside, Rowan was waiting with the horses. They had a decision to make. Stay in Helena and wait for the investigation to progress, or return to Sweetwater and face whatever Blackwood had planned. We go back, Vivian said before Rowan could ask. Those people stood up for us. We don't abandon them now. Blackwood will come after us the moment we return. Let him try. They rode out of Helena with Doc Miller heading back toward Sweetwater. Back toward danger. Back toward home. The return trip took 2 full days. On the afternoon of the second day, they crested the hill overlooking the valley and stopped. Smoke rose from the direction of Sweetwater. Not wildfire smoke. Building smoke. They pushed the horses faster. As they got closer, Vivian could see flames. The general store. The Porter's store. It was burning. They arrived to find half the town in the street watching helplessly as Margaret Porter's livelihood went up in flames. Margaret herself stood, frozen, tears streaming down her face. Vivian jumped from the wagon before it fully stopped. Where's Jim? Still in jail. They won't let him out even for this. Margaret's voice was broken. Blackwood did this. I know he did. The fire started right after someone came with a message that investigators were coming from Helena. Where is he? Where's Blackwood? His office. He's been there all day. Vivian started walking. Rowan caught her arm. What are you doing? Ending this. Vivian, you can't just watch me. She shook off his hand and kept walking. Behind her, she heard Rowan curse and follow, always following, always there. Blackwood's office sat above the bank, untouched by the fire that had consumed the store 2 blocks away. Vivian climbed the stairs and threw open the door without knocking. Blackwood looked up from his desk, unsurprised. Mrs. Hayes, I wondered when you'd arrive. You burned down their store. I did no such thing, though I understand there was an unfortunate accident with a lantern. These things happen. You're finished, Blackwood. The Territorial Land Office is investigating you. They have all the evidence. Every illegal contract, every falsified record, every family you've destroyed. Blackwood leaned back in his chair. Do they? How unfortunate. Although I imagine those investigators will have a difficult time finding witnesses willing to testify. People do tend to become forgetful when their homes and businesses are at risk. You can't intimidate everyone. Can't I? I've done a fair job so far. He stood walking to the window. You're an interesting woman, Mrs. Hayes. Smart, brave, foolishly idealistic. You remind me of my wife, actually. Before she learned better. Learned what? That principles don't keep you warm. That justice doesn't put food on the table. That in this world, power is the only thing that matters. He turned to face her. I could have helped you, you know. You and Rowan. Could have made things easy. But you chose the hard way. And now you'll pay for it. The only one paying will be you. In prison. Where you belong. Blackwood laughed. Prison? You think I'm going to prison? Oh, Mrs. Hayes, you truly don't understand how this works, do you? I own the sheriff. I own the judge. I own half the territorial government. Those investigators will find exactly what I want them to find. Nothing. You're wrong. Am I? We'll see. In the meantime, you and Rowan have a choice. Leave Sweetwater, tonight, permanently, or watch as everyone who helped you suffers the same fate as the Porters. Vivian felt ice in her veins. We're not leaving. Then blood will be on your hands. Blackwood moved back to his desk. Now get out of my office before I have you arrested for trespassing. Vivian turned and walked out. On the stairs, Rowan was waiting. I heard, he said quietly. We're not leaving. I know. But he's right about one thing. People are going to get hurt, already have been hurt, because of us. Rowan took her hands. No, because of him. Blackwood's responsible for his own actions. We're just refusing to let him keep getting away with them. What if the investigators don't find enough evidence? What if he's already covered his tracks? Then we find more evidence. We fight harder. We don't give up. He paused. Vivian, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you before. She looked up at him, surprised by his tone. I knew, Rowan said quietly. About the corruption. About how deep it went. About the land syndicate. I knew before I married you. Vivian went still. What? I didn't know the details, but I knew Blackwood was part of something bigger. Other towns, other land grabs. A whole network of people manipulating records and foreclosing on ranches. He met her eyes. That's why I needed someone who could understand financial records. Someone smart enough to uncover what I couldn't prove. I married you knowing I was bringing you into a war. The betrayal hit her like a fist. You lied to me. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing, Rowan. You let me think this was just about your ranch, just about one corrupt man, but it's bigger than that. And you knew. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't help. Vivian pulled her hands away. I gave up everything for this. I trusted you, and you used me. No, God, Vivian, no. His voice was raw. I needed help. Yes, but I never used you. Everything we've done together, as partners. Partners don't keep secrets. I know. You're right. I should have told you. He stepped closer. But Vivian, please, don't let this change what we're doing. Those people down there, they need us. Both of us, together. Vivian looked past him at the burning store. At Margaret crying. At the faces of people who'd risked everything on the hope that someone would finally stand up to Blackwood. Rowan was right about one thing. They couldn't stop now. Not when they were this close. "I'm not doing this for you anymore," she said coldly. "I'm doing it for them, for Jim and Margaret, for Henderson, for everyone Blackwood's destroyed." "That's enough." Rowan's voice was quiet. "That's all I'm asking." They walked down the stairs in silence. The fire was dying down. The store was a total loss. But the building could be rebuilt. The question was whether the people could be. Vivian spent the rest of the day helping where she could, organizing shelter, distributing food, making lists of what was lost and what could be salvaged. She didn't speak to Rowan unless necessary. The anger was still there, sharp and hot. As night fell, Doc Miller found her. "The territorial investigators arrive tomorrow." "Good." "Vivian, about Rowan." "I don't want to talk about it." "He was trying to protect you, in his own misguided way. By lying. By not overwhelming you with everything at once. He knew if he told you the full scope you might not come, and he needed you." "That's not protection, that's manipulation." Doc Miller was quiet for a moment. "You know, when I first met Rowan, he was barely holding on. The ranch was failing. His spirit was failing. He'd given up on ever winning against Blackwood. Then you arrived, and suddenly he was fighting again. Not because the odds had changed, but because he wasn't alone anymore. That doesn't excuse what he did." "No, but it explains it." The doctor touched her shoulder. "Don't throw away what you've built over this. You two are stronger together than apart, and we need you strong, all of us." After he left, Vivian sat alone and watched the stars appear. She was still angry, still hurt. But underneath that she understood. Rowan had been desperate, drowning, reaching for anything that might save him, just like she had been in Boston. Maybe they were more alike than she'd realized. The thought didn't make the betrayal hurt less, but it made it understandable, and understanding was a start. The territorial investigators arrived at dawn with a wagon full of documents and the authority of law behind them. Two men, both serious-faced and methodical. They set up in the town hall and began interviewing witnesses immediately. Vivian was called first. She sat across from them and repeated everything she'd told Commissioner Walsh. The lead investigator, a man named Patterson, took notes while his partner cross-referenced documents. "These allegations are extensive, Mrs. Hayes," Patterson said. "You understand we'll need to verify every claim." "I understand. That's why I brought proof." "Proof can be manufactured. We've seen it before." Vivian felt a chill. "Are you saying you don't believe me?" "I'm saying we investigate facts, not accusations. Mr. Blackwood is a prominent businessman. He's cooperated fully with our initial inquiries. He's even provided his own records for review." "Of course he has. He's had days to alter them." Patterson's expression didn't change. "We'll compare his records against yours and determine which are accurate. That's how investigations work." After 2 hours of questioning, they released her. Rowan was called next. Vivian waited outside, her stomach in knots. This wasn't going the way she'd expected. Patterson seemed more interested in discrediting her than in examining Blackwood's crimes. Margaret approached, wringing her hands. "They questioned me for an hour. Kept asking if you'd influenced my testimony, if you'd told me what to say." "What did you tell them?" "The truth. But Vivian, they kept pushing, like they wanted me to admit we were lying." Before Vivian could respond, the town hall door opened. The sheriff emerged with Jim Porter. For a moment, Vivian's heart lifted. Then she saw Jim's face. Bruised, exhausted, defeated. "Jim." Margaret ran to him. "Are you all right?" "They're releasing me." Jim's voice was hollow. "Dropping all charges." "That's wonderful." "In exchange for my testimony against Vivian and Rowan." The words hit like a slap. "What?" Jim wouldn't meet her eyes. "They said if I testify that you pressured me to lie about Blackwood, they'll drop the charges. If I don't, I go to trial. Could spend years in prison." "Jim, you can't. The charges are fabricated. You know that." I know a lot of things, Vivian. I know my wife just lost her business. I know we've got nothing left. I know that fighting Blackwood has cost us everything." He looked at her then, and his eyes were full of pain. "I'm sorry, but I have to think about Margaret, about surviving this." He walked away, Margaret supporting him. Vivian stood frozen, watching them go. Rowan emerged from the town hall. "What happened?" "They got to Jim, offered him a deal to testify against us." Rowan's jaw tightened. Blackwood's paying off the investigators. Or intimidating them. Either way, we're losing. Vivian felt desperation rising. "Rowan, if Jim testifies against us, it undermines everything. Makes us look like manipulators instead of victims. Then we find other witnesses, people Blackwood can't threaten, who everyone in this town is terrified of him. We saw that at the meeting. They'll support us publicly, but the moment there's real risk, they'll fold." She looked at him. "Just like Jim. Jim's scared. That's different from being complicit. The result's the same." They spent the rest of the day trying to shore up support. Some people stood firm. Doc Miller, Old Man Henderson, a few ranchers who'd lost everything and had nothing left to lose. But others wavered, made excuses, suddenly remembered pressing business elsewhere. By evening, Vivian counted only 6 people willing to testify against Blackwood, 6 against his empire of corruption and fear. "It's not enough," she said. Rowan didn't argue. They both knew it was true. That night, Vivian couldn't sleep. She paced her room at the boarding house, mind racing. There had to be something they'd missed, some piece of evidence Blackwood couldn't dispute or destroy. A knock at her door. She opened it to find Rowan there. "We need to talk," he said. "Now." "It can't wait." She let him in. He looked exhausted, older than his years. "I've been thinking about what Blackwood said," Rowan began. "About the bigger picture, about this being more than just him. What about it?" "When I first started noticing the problems with my accounts, I asked around. Other towns, other ranchers. The same patterns kept appearing. Different names running the schemes, but the same methods. The same systematic destruction." Vivian's pulse quickened. "You think it's organized, a network?" "I know it is. I just could never prove it." He pulled out a folded paper. "Until now, look at this." It was a letter addressed to Blackwood signed by someone named Marcus Thornton. The content was brief, but damning. References to the syndicate's quarterly targets, discussion of expanding operations to the Northern Territories, mention of eliminating resistant elements. "Where did you get this?" Vivian asked. "Blackwood's office. I broke in tonight while he was at dinner." "Rowan, that's illegal. So is everything he's done. The difference is I did it to save people. He did it to destroy them." Rowan met her eyes. "I know you're angry at me. I know I should have been honest from the start. But Vivian, this is our chance. This letter proves Blackwood's part of something bigger. If we can expose the whole syndicate, they can't just pay off local investigators. This becomes a federal case." Vivian read the letter again, slowly, carefully. It was real, and it was explosive. "Patterson will never accept this. He'll say we forged it." "Not Patterson. We go over his head, straight to the territorial governor." Rowan's voice was intense. "We bypass the corrupted local system entirely." "That'll take time, and Blackwood will know the letter's missing by morning." "Let him know. Let him panic. Panic makes people sloppy." Vivian wanted to stay angry at him, wanted to hold on to her hurt and betrayal. But looking at him now, she saw a man who'd been fighting alone for so long he'd forgotten how to ask for help properly, who'd made mistakes but was trying to fix them. "If we do this," she said slowly, "we do it together. No more secrets, no more holding back." "No more secrets," Rowan agreed. They sat at the small table and planned. The territorial capital was 2 days' ride. They'd leave at first light before Blackwood could move against them. They'd take the letter, all their documented evidence, and every witness willing to travel. They'd demand an audience with the governor and lay everything out. It was desperate. It was dangerous. It was their only chance. "You should try to sleep," Rowan said finally. Tomorrow's going to be hard. So is tonight. Vivian looked at him. Thank you. For fighting. Even when I was angry at you. You had every right to be angry. I did. I still do a little. She managed a small smile. But I'm learning that perfect honesty is hard when you're desperate. When everything's falling apart. You make choices you're not proud of because the alternative is giving up entirely. I should have trusted you with the whole truth. Yes, but I understand why you didn't. She paused. In Boston, when I exposed my fiancé, I didn't tell anyone beforehand. Not my parents, not my friends, because I knew they'd try to stop me. I made the choice alone because I didn't trust anyone else to understand. Rowan nodded slowly. We're more alike than I realized. We are, which means we should know better than to keep secrets from each other. From now on we will. He stood to leave. At the door he turned back. Vivian, when this is over, when Blackwood's finished and the ranch is safe, if you want to leave, I'll understand. I'll give you a divorce. Let you go back to Boston or wherever you want. You didn't sign up for all this. The offer surprised her, and the fact that it hurt to hear it surprised her more. We'll talk about that when this is over, she said quietly. After he left, Vivian lay in bed and thought about his words. About leaving. About Boston. About the life she'd run from, and whether she'd want to go back, even if she could. She realized the answer was no. Not because Boston had rejected her, but because Sweetwater, this dusty, struggling town full of scared people, felt more like home than any ballroom ever had. They left before sunrise with Doc Miller Henderson and 3 other witnesses. 7 people against an empire. It should have felt hopeless. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something. The ride was hard and fast. They pushed through without stopping except to rest the horses. Vivian clutched the satchel with their evidence like it was made of gold. On the second day, they saw riders behind them. 4 men gaining fast. Blackwood's men, Rowan said grimly. He knows we have the letter. How far to the capital? 5 miles, maybe 6. Can we make it? We have to. They pushed the horses harder. Vivian could hear the pursuing riders getting closer. Rowan pulled his rifle. Doc Miller did the same. Vivian, no matter what happens, you keep riding, Rowan ordered. Get that evidence to the governor. I'm not leaving you. You have to. This is bigger than any of us. A shot rang out. The bullet went wide, but the message was clear. Stop or be shot. Henderson suddenly pulled his wagon sideways, blocking the road. Go, he shouted. I'll slow them down. Henderson, no. But the old man was already dismounting, rifle raised. My son died because of them. At least let me make it count. There was no time to argue. They rode past while Henderson fired at the pursuing men. Vivian heard shouts behind them. More shots. She didn't look back. They crashed into the territorial capital with 3 riders still pursuing. Straight to the governor's mansion. Rowan and Doc Miller jumped down, forming a barrier between Vivian and the approaching men. Get inside, Rowan said. Now. Vivian ran up the steps. Guards blocked her way. I need to see the governor. It's an emergency. The governor doesn't see anyone without an appointment. Tell him it's about the Blackwood Land Syndicate. Tell him I have proof of a conspiracy spanning 3 territories. Tell him if he doesn't see me right now, the story goes to every newspaper from here to Washington. The guard's eyes widened. He disappeared inside. Vivian turned to see Blackwood's men dismounting. Rowan and Doc Miller stood their ground. Give us the documents, one of the men said. Make this easy. Not a chance. The guard reappeared. The governor will see you. All of you. Now. They hurried inside, Blackwood's men following. The governor's office was impressive, all dark wood and territorial flags. The man himself was 60, sharp-eyed, and clearly annoyed at being interrupted. This better be good, Governor Harrison said. You have 5 minutes. Vivian set the satchel on his desk. It's better than good, sir. It's the exposure of the largest land fraud operation in territorial history. She laid it out systematically. The contracts, the altered records, the illegal fees. Henderson's foreclosure documents. The statements from multiple families. And finally the letter proving Blackwood was part of a larger syndicate. Harrison read everything in silence. His expression grew darker with each page. "These are serious allegations," he said finally. "They're documented facts, sir." "Mr. Blackwood, I assume you have a response." Vivian turned. Blackwood stood in the doorway flanked by two well-dressed men she didn't recognize. He looked calm. Too calm. "Governor, this is a coordinated slander campaign by a vindictive woman and her accomplices. Mrs. Hayes was run out of Boston for making false accusations against her own fiancé. Now she's doing the same thing here." "My fiancé was convicted and sent to prison," Vivian said coldly. "The accusations weren't false. They were proven in court. Were they? Or did you simply ruin a man's reputation so thoroughly that he accepted a plea bargain to end the ordeal? The accusation stung because it contained a grain of truth. Her fiancé had taken a plea deal, but only because the evidence against him was overwhelming." Governor Blackwood continued smoothly. "I've brought my own documentation. You'll see that my business practices are completely legal. Any irregularities in the accounts are due to clerical errors, nothing more." He produced his own stack of papers, clean, professional, perfectly crafted to dispute everything Vivian had shown. Harrison looked between them. "This requires investigation, thorough investigation." "Which is exactly what I want," Blackwood said. "I welcome scrutiny. I have nothing to hide." "You're a liar," Vivian said. The words came out harder than she intended. "You've destroyed families, manipulated records, burned down businesses. You tried to have us killed on the road." "I did no such thing. If you were attacked, it was probably by common bandits. These territories are dangerous, Mrs. Hayes, especially for those who make accusations without proof." "I have proof. You have papers that could have been forged, letters that could have been fabricated, statements from people with grudges against me." Blackwood smiled. "Governor, I'm confident a fair investigation will clear my name. In the meantime, I'd like to press charges against Mrs. Hayes for theft. That letter she's using as evidence was stolen from my office." The trap snapped shut. Vivian felt it closing around her. "Is this true?" Harrison asked. "Was the letter obtained illegally?" Rowan stepped forward. "I took it, sir, not Vivian. If anyone's to be charged with theft, it should be me. Breaking and entering is a serious crime, Mr. Hayes. So is systematic fraud, Governor. I'd think you'd be more concerned about that." Harrison's expression was unreadable. "Everyone out. I need time to review these documents and consult with the territorial attorney. We'll reconvene tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Both parties present all evidence and witnesses. Then I'll make a decision about how to proceed." "Governor, I must protest," Blackwood began. "Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. That's final." They filed out. In the hallway, Blackwood passed close to Vivian. "You should have taken my offer to leave," he said quietly. "Now you've just made things worse for everyone." That night, they stayed at a hotel near the Capitol building. Guards posted outside their rooms at the governor's order. Protection or surveillance. Vivian wasn't sure. She couldn't eat the dinner Rowan brought her. Couldn't stop replaying the meeting. Blackwood had been too confident. Too prepared. "He knew we were coming," she said. Rowan sat across from her. "Had to. We weren't exactly subtle." "No, I mean he knew our strategy, our evidence, everything. He had counter documents ready. Perfect responses." "Patterson must have told him. The investigators." Vivian felt sick. If they're working with Blackwood, then the whole territorial system is compromised. Harrison might be too. "We don't know that. We don't know he's not." She stood pacing. "Rowan, what if tomorrow goes badly? What if Harrison sides with Blackwood? Then we go to the federal authorities, the newspapers. We keep fighting. For how long? How long do we keep fighting a system designed to protect people like Blackwood?" Rowan was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Do you remember what you told me that first night about why you kept fighting in Boston, even when it destroyed you? I said staying silent would make me complicit." "Yeah, that." He looked at her. I spent 2 years being silent, Vivian, watching Blackwood destroy people, knowing something was wrong but being too afraid to speak up. Then you arrived and I watched you stand in that town meeting and refuse to back down. You weren't afraid. Or if you were, you didn't let it stop you. I was terrified. But you spoke anyway. That's courage. Real courage. He moved closer. Tomorrow, whatever happens, we speak the truth. We lay out the evidence. We let the facts speak for themselves. And if Harrison's honest, he'll see it. If he's not, at least we tried. And if trying isn't enough, then we try again and again until it is. Vivian wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that truth and evidence mattered more than power and money. But she'd learned in Boston that the world didn't always work that way. Still, what choice did they have except to keep trying? The next morning they assembled in the governor's formal hearing room. Bigger than his office, more official. Witnesses sat on benches. Blackwood had brought lawyers. Vivian had Rowan and the truth. Harrison entered precisely at 10. Everyone stood. Sit. We're here to examine the allegations made by Mrs. Vivian Hayes against Cyrus Blackwood regarding systematic land fraud. Harrison's voice was formal. Mrs. Hayes, present your case. Vivian stood. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table. Governor, the evidence shows a clear pattern. Mr. Blackwood has been manipulating land records, charging illegal fees, and foreclosing on properties through fraudulent means. We have contracts showing interest rates exceeding territorial limits, payment records that have been altered, testimony from multiple families who've lost everything through these schemes, and a letter proving Mr. Blackwood is part of a larger criminal syndicate operating across multiple territories. She presented each piece of evidence methodically, explaining the numbers, showing the patterns, building the case piece by piece. Harrison listened without interruption. So did Blackwood, that same confident smile on his face. When Vivian finished, Harrison turned to Blackwood. Your response. Blackwood stood. Governor, this is a tragic case of misunderstanding and misdirected anger. Yes, some ranchers have lost their land. That's the harsh reality of frontier economics. Markets fluctuate. Droughts happen. Not every business succeeds. But to suggest there's criminal intent behind natural economic forces is absurd. He produced his counter documents. Every charge Vivian had made, he had an explanation for. The high interest rates, market adjustments for high-risk loans, the altered records, clerical errors corrected to reflect accurate information, the foreclosures, legitimate enforcement of legal contracts. As for this letter, Blackwood held it up. I have no idea where it came from. It's not my handwriting. The signature isn't mine. This is clearly a forgery designed to implicate me in fictional crimes. It's not a forgery. Vivian stood. I saw it in your office. An office you broke into, Mrs. Hayes. Illegally. Anything found under such circumstances is inadmissible as evidence. Harrison raised a hand. Mrs. Hayes, sit down. Mr. Blackwood, continue. There's nothing more to say, Governor. I'm a businessman. I've built my holdings through legal means. If some people are unhappy with the outcomes, that's unfortunate. But unhappiness isn't criminality. What about the fire at the general store? Vivian couldn't stay silent. What about Jim Porter being arrested on false charges? The fire was an accident. Mr. Porter was arrested based on evidence that upon further investigation proved insufficient. He was released. Where's the crime in that? The crime is in the intimidation, the threats, the systematic destruction of anyone who opposes you. Can you prove any of that? Blackwood's smile was sharp. Or are these more accusations without evidence? Harrison held up a hand. Enough. I'll hear from the witnesses now. Doc Miller testified first. Then Henderson, then the other ranchers. Each told their story. Each presented their evidence. And each time Blackwood's lawyers produced counter-documentation that made the witnesses look confused or mistaken or vindictive. Vivian watched the hearing slip away from them. Every truth they spoke was met with a plausible lie. Every fact was countered with an alternative explanation. Finally, Harrison called for a recess. I'll review all evidence and render a decision in 1 hour." They filed out. Vivian felt numb. Rowan touched her shoulder, but she pulled away. They'd lost. She could feel it. In the hallway, Doc Miller approached. "There's something you should know. I asked around last night. About Harrison. About whether he could be trusted. And he's honest. Really honest, which is rare out here. If he sees the truth, he'll act on it." Doc Miller paused. "The problem is Blackwood's evidence is good. Really good. Professional. Like it was prepared by people who knew exactly what they were doing." "The syndicate," Vivian said. "Probably. They've had years to perfect this. To create systems that look legal on paper even when they're destroying people in practice." An hour later, they were called back in. Harrison looked grim. "I've reviewed all evidence presented by both parties. This is a complex case with contradicting documentation and conflicting testimony." He paused. "However, certain facts are clear. Mrs. Hayes, your allegations of criminal fraud are serious. But the evidence you've presented, while compelling in its pattern, is not sufficient for criminal charges. Mr. Blackwood's counter-documentation provides reasonable alternative explanations for most of the irregularities you've identified." Vivian felt her heart sink. "That said," Harrison continued, "reasonable does not mean truthful, and patterns do not lie even when individual documents do. Mr. Blackwood, I'm ordering a full territorial audit of your business holdings. Every contract, every transaction, every foreclosure. If your books are as clean as you claim, you have nothing to fear. If they're not, you'll face criminal prosecution." Blackwood's smile faltered slightly. "Furthermore," Harrison said, "I'm forwarding all documentation regarding this alleged land syndicate to federal authorities. If there is an organized criminal operation manipulating land records across territories that falls under federal jurisdiction, they'll investigate accordingly." "Governor, this is outrageous," Blackwood began. "This is justice, Mr. Blackwood. Slow, methodical, thorough justice. Court is adjourned." Outside, Vivian couldn't tell if they'd won or lost. The audit would take months. The federal investigation could take years. Meanwhile, Blackwood still controlled Sweetwater, still held power. "It's something," Rowan said. "It's not nothing. It's not enough. It's a start." They rode back to Sweetwater in silence. What awaited them there, Vivian didn't know. Blackwood had been humiliated, but not defeated. That made him more dangerous, not less. As they crested the hill overlooking the valley, Vivian saw something unexpected. A crowd gathered in the town square, not scattered or fearful. Together, organized. They rode closer. Margaret Porter stood on a makeshift platform speaking to the crowd. "We've been afraid too long," Margaret's voice carried. "Afraid to speak, afraid to fight back. But Vivian and Rowan showed us that fear is exactly what Blackwood wants. He uses it to control us. Well, I'm done being controlled." Cheers erupted. Vivian stared in shock. "What's happening?" she asked. Doc Miller grinned. "Henderson made it back yesterday, told everyone what happened. About you standing up to Blackwood in front of the governor. About the audit. About the federal investigation. People are inspired, Vivian. They're ready to fight." Rowan helped Vivian down from the wagon. Together they walked toward the crowd. People saw them and started clapping, then cheering. Margaret spotted them, and her face lit up. "They're here, the ones who started all this." Vivian felt overwhelmed. These were the same people who'd been too afraid to testify, who'd backed down when Blackwood threatened them. Now they were standing together, united. "What changed?" she asked Margaret. "You did. You showed us it was possible to fight back and survive, that we didn't have to face him alone." Margaret took her hand. "We're with you now, all of us. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Vivian looked at the crowd, at their determined faces, at the hope that had replaced fear. And she realized something. They hadn't lost today. They'd won something more important than a verdict. They'd won each other. She looked at Rowan. He was smiling. Really smiling for the first time since she'd learned about his secrets. "Together," she said. "Together." He agreed. Whatever came next, they'd face it. Not as individuals fighting alone, but as a community refusing to be broken. And that made all the difference. The unity lasted exactly 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, federal marshals arrived in Sweetwater with warrants. Not for Blackwood, for Vivian and Rowan. Obstruction of justice. The lead marshal said, reading from the document. Theft of private documents. Conspiracy to defraud. You're both under arrest. Vivian felt the ground shift beneath her. That's impossible. We're the ones who reported the crimes. And you did so using evidence obtained illegally. Mr. Blackwood has filed federal charges. You'll need to come with us. The crowd that had gathered in support fell silent. This was Blackwood's countermove. If he couldn't beat them with lies, he'd bury them with legal technicalities. Rowan stepped forward. We'll come peacefully, but we want a lawyer present before any questioning. That's your right. The marshal gestured to his men. Cuff them. As the cold metal closed around Vivian's wrists, she looked at Rowan. His face was grim, but not defeated. They'd known this was possible. They'd prepared for it. What they hadn't prepared for was Margaret Porter's reaction. No. Margaret stepped between them and the marshals. You're not taking them. Ma'am, step aside, or you'll be arrested too. Then arrest me. Arrest all of us. Margaret turned to the crowd. They fought for us. Now we fight for them. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Jim Porter stepped forward. Then Doc Miller. Then Henderson. Then others. A wall of people between the marshals and their prisoners. The lead marshal's hand moved toward his gun. Vivian's heart stopped. Don't. Rowan's voice cut through the tension. Margaret, everyone stand down. This isn't the way. They can't just take you. Yes, they can. And if you interfere, you'll all be arrested. Then who's left to keep fighting? Rowan looked at each of them. We'll face these charges. We'll prove they're false. But we need you here free continuing the fight. Can you do that? Slowly, reluctantly, the crowd parted. The marshals led Vivian and Rowan to a wagon. As they climbed in, Vivian caught Doc Miller's eye. He nodded slightly. Message received. Keep the pressure on. Don't let Blackwood win by default. The federal holding facility was in Helena. 2 cells. Vivian in one, Rowan in the other with a wall between them. She couldn't see him, but she could hear him sometimes. His breathing. His pacing. It helped knowing he was close. The lawyer arrived the next morning. A young man named Thomas Whitmore sent by Commissioner Walsh. This is a mess, Whitmore said bluntly. Blackwood's charges are technically valid. You did break into his office. You did steal documents. The fact that those documents prove his crimes doesn't negate your crimes. So we're going to prison for exposing corruption. Vivian felt fury rising. Not if I can help it. But we need to be strategic. The federal prosecutor wants a plea deal. You plead guilty to the theft charges, you get 6 months. You fight it, you could get years. Absolutely not. Mrs. Hayes. No, I won't plead guilty to doing the right thing. I won't give Blackwood that satisfaction. Whitmore sighed. Then we go to trial, which means time. Months, probably, during which you'll remain in custody. What about bail? Blackwood's arguing you're a flight risk. Given that you fled Boston under scandalous circumstances, the judge might agree. Vivian wanted to scream. This was exactly what Blackwood wanted. Them locked up, unable to fight, while he dismantled everything they'd built. What about the audit? She asked. Harrison ordered a full territorial audit of Blackwood's holdings. Still ongoing. These things take time. We don't have time. Whitmore packed his papers. I'll do everything I can, Mrs. Hayes, but you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that legal justice moves slower than we'd like. After he left, Vivian sat on the cell bench and tried not to break. She'd survived Boston's rejection. She'd survived Blackwood's attacks. She could survive this, but God, she was tired of surviving. Vivian! Rowan's voice came through the wall. You still there? Where else would I be? A pause. Then, I'm sorry, for all of it, for bringing you into this, for not being honest from the start, for... Stop. Vivian moved closer to the wall. We've been through this. I chose to come here. I chose to fight. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Even if together means prison. Even then. She heard him move on the other side. Imagined him sitting with his back to the same wall. Inches apart. Worlds apart. Vivian, there's something I need to tell you, while we still have time. What? That first day when you arrived, I was going to call it off, send you back to Boston. I'd already written the letter explaining that I'd made a mistake, that the advertisement was premature. This surprised her. Why didn't you? Because you stepped off that train looking like you were ready for war. And I realized I didn't need a wife who would obey and stay silent. I needed a partner who would fight. His voice softened. I needed you. I just didn't know how much until you were standing there. Vivian pressed her palm flat against the wall. Rowan, let me finish. These past weeks watching you face down Blackwood organize evidence rally people who were too afraid to hope. You've been extraordinary. And I know I don't have the right to ask this, especially now. But when this is over, if we survive it, I'd like the chance to be the husband you deserve. Not just a partner in a fight, but someone who stands beside you in everything. Vivian's throat tightened. You already are. Am I? Yes, every day with you has been a surprise. Not grand gestures or empty promises, just steady, honest partnership. That's more than I ever expected, more than I knew I needed. Silence. Then Rowan's voice rough with emotion. I love you, Vivian. I should have said it sooner, should have said it better. But there it is. Vivian closed her eyes. I love you too. The words hung in the air between them, precious and fragile. A declaration made through a wall in a prison with their futures uncertain. But real. More real than anything in her carefully constructed Boston life had ever been. 2 weeks passed. Whitmore visited regularly but had little good news. The trial date was set for 3 months out. Bail was denied. The audit continued, but revealed nothing conclusive yet. Blackwood remained free and powerful. Then on the 15th day, everything changed. A federal marshal appeared at Vivian's cell in the middle of the night. Mrs. Hayes, come with me. What's happening? Just come. She was led to an interrogation room. Inside sat a man she'd never seen before. Well-dressed, nervous, clearly not sleeping well. Mrs. Hayes, this is Marcus Thornton, the marshal said. Vivian's breath caught. The name from the letter. The syndicate member. Mr. Thornton has information he'd like to share. Information that directly impacts your case. Thornton wouldn't meet her eyes. I'm here to cut a deal. Full immunity in exchange for testimony against Cyrus Blackwood and the entire land syndicate operation. Vivian's pulse raced. Why now? Because the federal investigation is closing in. Because Blackwood's getting desperate, and desperate men make dangerous choices. Because I have a family, and I don't want to go to prison for the rest of my life. Thornton finally looked at her. And because what you said at that hearing about staying silent making you complicit, it got to me. My daughter's 10 years old. I don't want her growing up thinking her father was a criminal who destroyed people's lives for profit. The marshal slid a folder across the table. Mr. Thornton has provided us with complete documentation of the syndicate's operations. Names, accounts, properties, methods. It's everything we need for federal RICO charges. Vivian opened the folder. Page after page of detailed records, bank transfers, land deed manipulations, correspondence between syndicate members, a complete map of corruption spanning 3 territories and involving dozens of prominent businessmen. This is incredible, she breathed. It's enough to bring them all down, the marshal said, including Blackwood. In light of this cooperation, the federal prosecutor is dropping all charges against you and your husband. You'll be released immediately. Vivian felt tears sting her eyes. We're free. You're free. And more importantly, you were right about everything. She wanted to feel victorious. Instead, she felt exhausted and grateful, and overwhelmed all at once. They released Rowan an hour later. He emerged looking haggard, but alive. When he saw Vivian waiting, his whole face transformed. They didn't speak, just held each other in the hallway of the federal building while marshals walked around them. Solid. Real. Together. "It's over," Vivian whispered. "Not quite. But soon." The federal prosecutor moved fast. Within a week, arrest warrants were issued for Blackwood and 17 other syndicate members. Federal marshals swept through Sweetwater and 3 other towns simultaneously. The operation was coordinated, overwhelming, and devastatingly effective. Vivian and Rowan watched from the general store as marshals led Blackwood out in chains. He saw them standing there, and for the first time, his confidence cracked. He looked old, defeated, human. "Mrs. Hayes," he called out, "this isn't justice. It's revenge." "No," Vivian said clearly. "Justice is what you're finally going to face. Revenge would be me taking pleasure in watching you suffer. But I don't. I just feel sorry for all the people you destroyed before someone finally stopped you." He was loaded into a wagon and driven away. The crowd that had gathered didn't cheer. They just watched in silence, bearing witness. The trials took months. But with Thornton's testimony and the mountains of evidence, the outcomes were never in doubt. Blackwood received 25 years in federal prison. Other syndicate members got similar sentences. Properties were returned to their rightful owners. Debts were forgiven. The system of corruption was dismantled piece by piece. Jim and Margaret Porter used the insurance settlement from their burned store to rebuild. Bigger, better. They named it New Beginnings General Store, and nobody missed the symbolism. Henderson got his son's ranch back. He sold it and used the money to establish a scholarship fund for young ranchers who'd lost family to the syndicate's greed. Doc Miller continued his rounds delivering babies and setting bones and telling anyone who'd listen about the woman from Boston who'd changed everything. And Vivian and Rowan returned to their ranch. It was different now. The debt was cleared. The accounts were clean. Federal investigators had awarded them compensation for the years of illegal fees. They could actually make a living from the land. But more than that, the ranch felt like home. Vivian stood on the porch one evening watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in shades of gold and crimson. Rowan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. "I'm thinking about the day I arrived here, how terrified I was, how certain I was that I'd made a terrible mistake. And now I can't imagine being anywhere else." She turned in his arms. "Every day with you is still a surprise, but not the kind I expected." "What kind then?" "The kind where I wake up and realize I'm not running anymore. I'm not hiding. I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not." She touched his face. "I'm just living. Really living. And it's better than anything I left behind." Rowan kissed her softly. "Boston's loss is Montana's gain. Montana's gain is my freedom." They stood there as the stars appeared one by one in the vast Montana sky. Behind them, the ranch house glowed with lamplight. Ahead, the land stretched endlessly, full of possibility, full of promise. A month later, Vivian received a letter from her mother. The first communication since she'd left Boston. She opened it with trembling hands. The letter was brief, formal, but it contained an acknowledgement that perhaps Vivian had been right about her fiancé after all, that the family had been wrong to shun her, that if she ever wanted to return to Boston, she would be welcomed. Vivian read it twice. Then she folded it carefully and set it aside. "Everything all right?" Rowan asked. "Everything's perfect." "You're not going back?" "No. Boston was where I came from. Sweetwater is where I belong." She looked at him. "This is my home now. You're my home." That evening they hosted dinner for Margaret, Jim, Doc Miller, and Henderson. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and comfortable silences. These people had become family, not by blood or social obligation, but by choice and shared struggle. After everyone left, Vivian and Rowan cleaned up together. A simple domestic task that felt profound in its ordinariness. This was what she'd fought for. Not grand gestures or dramatic victories, but the right to live quietly with someone she loved, doing work that mattered in a place that felt like home. "Rowan," she said as they finished the dishes, "do you ever regret the way things happened? The fighting, the danger, all of it?" He thought about it. "I regret that people got hurt, that it took so long for justice to happen. But regret marrying you, regret fighting alongside you. Never. Even though I complicated everything. You didn't complicate things, Vivian. You made them clear. Before you came, I was just surviving, accepting corruption as inevitable. You showed me that fighting back was possible, that one person speaking truth could change everything. We changed it together. Yes, but you started it." Vivian smiled. "In Boston, they called me difficult, troublesome, a woman who didn't know her place. And what did you call yourself? Honest, principled, a woman who knew exactly what her place should be." She paused. "Out here, I get to define that place for myself. Not society, not tradition. Me. And where is your place?" She looked around the simple ranch house. At the life they were building. At the man who stood beside her, not because convention demanded it, but because he chose to. "Right here," she said. "Exactly where I'm standing." The seasons changed. Fall turned to winter. Winter gave way to spring. The ranch prospered. Vivian kept the books with meticulous care, and this time, the numbers told a story of growth instead of manipulation. Rowan worked the land with renewed purpose, knowing it was truly his. They didn't talk much about Boston, or the trials, or Blackwood. Those were chapters closed. The past had shaped them, but didn't define them anymore. One morning, Vivian woke before dawn and slipped out to the porch. The air was crisp, promising another clear day. She heard Rowan stir inside, then his footsteps approaching. He joined her, bringing coffee. They drank in companionable silence, watching the sun rise over land that had tested them and transformed them. "You know what I realized," Vivian said eventually. "What? I came here thinking I was choosing the unknown, the safe, quiet alternative to scandal." She laughed softly. "Turns out the unknown was exactly what I needed. Not safety, not quiet, but the chance to become who I was, always meant to be." And who's that? Someone who doesn't run from hard truths. Someone who fights for what's right, even when it costs everything. Someone who loves honestly and lives freely. She looked at him. Someone whole. Rowan took her hand. "You were always whole, Vivian. You just needed space to realize it." "Maybe. Or maybe I needed you to see it first. To treat me like a partner instead of a problem. To stand beside me instead of in front of me. That's what love is. Not possession. Not protection. Just two people choosing each other. Every day." "Every day," Vivian agreed. They finished their coffee as the sun climbed higher, painting the Montana landscape in shades of hope and possibility. Behind them, the house waited. Ahead, another day of work and purpose and simple joy. Vivian thought about the woman who'd stepped off that train months ago. Desperate, running, afraid. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger. Someone who'd discovered that fleeing high society for a cowboy hadn't been an escape at all. It had been the beginning of everything that mattered. Every day with Rowan was a stunning surprise. Not because he changed, but because she did. Growing, evolving, becoming more herself with each sunrise. And that transformation, that daily choice to be present and honest and brave, was the greatest gift she'd ever received. She'd left Boston to hide from scandal. She'd found Montana and learned to stand in truth. She'd married a stranger and discovered a partner. She'd run from her past and built a future worth fighting for. The cowboy beside her wasn't perfect. Neither was she. But together, they were exactly what the other needed. Steady, true, home. Vivian squeezed Rowan's hand and smiled at the morning stretching before them. Whatever came next, they'd face it the same way they'd faced everything else. Together. Honest. Unafraid. And that made all the difference in the world.